everyone, and welcome to Smith and Hesson. It's the first edition of 2021, and plenty to talk about. Mike Hesson and I both wish you the happiest of New Year's from a Sky cricket perspective anyway. Mike down there in Dunedin, and we've both been feasting on a number of very interesting test matches over the last 4 or 5 days. We'll talk a bit about those in the next half hour or so, and pay tribute to another New Zealand cricket legend who unfortunately just recently passed away. But good morning to you, Mike. How's it down there in Dunedin?
Oh, it's actually wet and cold, Smithy, which is a bit unusual. So, yeah, certainly rugged up this morning. But yeah, Happy New Year to everyone. Yeah,
summer down there, of course. Okay, right. Well, let's look at what's been going on. Particularly start with Australia, which was the series Australia-India, which is we're of course carrying on Channel 52 here at Sky. And some people are saying one of the most remarkable turnarounds in sport after being bowled out for 36 at the Adelaide Oval. I don't quite see it that way, Mike, because if I look at the test matches overall, and sometimes when you're analysing a test match, you do it session by session. And I was kind of thinking that India have dominated most of the sessions in the series so far, and that was really, it was just something out of the blue. They lost that session that badly, that horribly badly, that 36, that they lost that test. But for me, I think they've been the better side.
Yeah, delighted to see, for world cricket, that India, didn't think too much about the 36, came out, played positively. There was some really good debuts. Shubman Gill showed some great signs, and we talked about, how promising he is. Ajinkya Rahane was amazing with his 100. There's 2 back-to-back 100s at the MCG. And then Mohammad Siraj came in and took 5 wickets, 5 big wickets. And he looked like he belonged. So all in all, India dominated that test match from start to finish.
They did, and I'd like to focus a little bit on Rahane because we talked about how he would go, not just as a batsman, but as a leader. And he got all sorts of plaudits. So, India winning without Kohli was something we thought, well, could that possibly happen? Man, he took over the reins quite beautifully. I like the look of him. He looks calm. He doesn't panic around those DRS situations. I thought Rahane did a wonderful job, and that bodes well, I think, when Kohli comes back into the mix, to have a leadership that powerful at the top will only serve them well.
Yeah, I agree, Smithy. I think after you get bowled out for 36, you do need calm heads. You don't need anyone that's going to ramp up how important the next session is, or the next someone who's very calm and meticulous and quite trusting in terms of his players. So Ajinkya Rahane was probably the perfect guy there to come in and replace Virat Kohli. After such a poor session. And as I said, the fact they started well just gave them a huge amount of confidence. So, to add to that leadership group, to add the Virat Kohli exuberance and of intent, and then you add the calmness of Ajinkya Rahane underneath, it's a nice combination.
One of the most beautiful things from this side of the Tasman is to watch an Australian sporting team under pressure. It's not very often you can say that an Australian cricket team has been under so much scrutiny about their performance on the field as this side has, and the people like Ricky Ponting, Alan Border, Shane Warne, all the greats of yesteryear are all chiming in and having their 10 cents worth. So no great surprise that, ironically, the only guy that scored 50 for Australia in this series is Joe Burns in the run chase in Adelaide, but no great surprise that he had to go. So this is, I won't say turmoil, it's getting close to it.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do, where they bring Warner back in, Pukovsky, who was the original opener, or whether they stick with Head. So it's going to be interesting. For me, Steve Smith's he's the problem child at the moment. I mean, he's such a good player, but he scored 10 runs in 3 innings, and that's obviously led to him dropping off the top of the World Championship batting rankings. But surely he can't have 3 test matches in a row where he doesn't get a big score.
Well, I can't remember him playing his shot in this series so far. I can't remember a memorable passage where Steve Smith actually looked like he was in control of the situation out there. So this is the way I read about Steve Smith. That he's forgotten the art of batting, the way Steve Smith bats. And he's becoming too paranoid about what people are saying about his technique, what people are, and how they're trying to attack him. I mean, he is so concerned for me, Mike, about the pocket area. And when I talk about the pocket, I'm talking about fielders around about the square leg, square mid-wicket, and those guys on the 45 behind square. I think he's thinking so much about that. You don't see him looking to hit through the offside. You're looking for him to be so careful in that area. It's getting to the point now where it's getting him out. And it's also getting to the point where he's actually walking so far across the stumps, he exposes leg stump. That, to me, if I was coaching Steve Smith, I would say, let's get back to Steve Smith and forget about the short pitch bowling, forget about them bowling at your body, and just, you start getting back to the point where you are able to dominate them and make them change. But at the moment, he's easy meat.
Yeah, well, Test cricket's often about trying to score off that good delivery, which for most players is fourth stump, top of fourth stump, top of off stump. But for him, he's made a career for 2 or 3 years about flicking that through mid-wicket and being able to access both sides of the park. Now, sides have looked at it and thought, we can't continue doing this. So you're right, they're changing their tact. And even in one-day cricket, we used to have 2 behind square on the leg side or 1 just in front, so a leg gully and a guy just in front catching to Trent Bolt and try and bowl at leg stump. And we got him out a few times in that space. So in Test cricket, I think he's got to go back to, hey, how am I going to score? At the moment, he's starting to look like he's trying to survive, and that's never been Steve Smith's method.
I don't think Labuschagne is in the kind of form that he was against New Zealand last year. In fact, the golden year he had last year and the year before, I thought he's looked a little bit out of sorts as well. And I think it relates to the fact that, they're not getting a start. They're not getting, these guys are in under pressure. Both he and Smith are coming in pressure situations against Bumrah, who's been outstanding, of course, Siraj, as you say. And I think Warner might be the fix for them. I think Warner, the way he plays, if he comes off, then, of course, they score runs quickly to begin with, and he puts sides on the back foot. And I think that might help the batting attitudes of both Labuschagne and Smith.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Bumrah's got a nice matchup against him, though, in terms of that either going over the wicket and bowling as that blind spot on about leg stump and nipping it away. He's had some success against him there. Or the Stuart Broad method of going around, because he's got that ability, as I said, to angle in and then nip away. So that matchup will be intriguing.
Okay, so what do India do? They've got the odd injury issue, but now they've I think Shubman Gill did enough to suggest that he's going to be fine. Rohit Sharma has been talked about as coming back in. Sonny Gavaskar says you've got to have him. You've got to have him at the top of the order. Shift Shubman Gill down to number 5 maybe. What would you do with this India squad? And bearing in mind they've got the injury issues around about the fast bowling situation.
Yeah, there's also talk about Mayank Agarwal in terms of the fact he's probably struggled a little bit in the first couple of tests. Pink ball test was difficult. Going into the series, he was the number 1 opener, so I really hope they don't shift that. For me, I'd actually bring Rohit in the middle at 5. I wouldn't move Shubman Gill. He's taken on that new ball. He's chased down a small target, so he would have got plenty of confidence in that. I would stick him where he's done well. I mean, the last thing you want is a young player getting shifted around, whereas Rohit Sharma's, I think, got the capability and the experience to be able to adapt a lot easier. I would bring him in for Vihari, who's been useful, but I think that would be the change in the batting lineup. And Natarajan would be the one for me who comes in for Umesh Yadav. Left arm action, did really well in the short form game.
The key cog for me there, who we haven't mentioned yet, is Jadeja. I thought he had an outstanding Test match. He's such a good player. He's a world-class all-rounder, and I think along with Ashwin, he will be a big factor in the Test match, which is of course now confirmed being back at Sydney. And it doesn't matter how green they tend to make Sydney wickets, they still turn, and I think that's a big factor. Right, let's go to the host then, Australia, who will be working things around. Justin Langer, as a coach, is generally fairly mild-mannered sort of a guy, a good analyst of the game, and has had a great record. But he's got issues, and he's got an issue too, not just at the top of the order. He's got an issue, I think, with Travis Head, who is, some people say, the captain in waiting, or one of the possibilities of a captain in waiting. But at the moment, his core job is to score runs in that middle order position. And he's not being dominant, and he's simply not doing it. So what do you do with this Australian batting lineup if Pekoski and Warner are judged fit?
Well, it depends how much patience they have, Smithy, and suggesting by what we've heard and read, not a huge amount. So, yeah, you're right. Travis Head's been the man and their leadership group that they've been wanting to do well. He did well a couple of tests ago without getting big scores. So I think if they shifted him, I think it would be a mistake. Warner comes in, Wade stays there, and Travis Head stays at 5. That would also provide some confidence to the group. I think if they all of a sudden start shuffling the decks, it starts to bring in a whole heap of doubt within the group as well as outside.
Okay, let's head across to South Africa, where the other test match, which has been shown following on from Australia versus India, of course, is South Africa versus Sri Lanka. Look, Sri Lanka I thought were quite good first up, scoring 396. But then South Africa getting that massive first innings lead, I think was always going to tell on them, Mike. I know you've got a theory about how you build up for test match cricket in particular, and theirs has basically been non-existent.
Yeah, look, it has. I mean, they built everybody up for the Bangladesh series. That got cancelled. Then in their preparation, the Lankan Premier League got stuck in there, and all of their test squad had to go away and play in that to give that some real credibility. And then you jump on a plane and you head straight into a test match, having had no loading or anything from a bowling perspective. So it's difficult. And in these COVID times, it's a real challenge in terms of getting, your bowling group up to a period of time without warm-up games. You don't want to be going there for too long. Obviously, you've got your quarantine period. So, that once again puts you back from a bowling loading perspective. So not only the batting side is it a struggle, where we talked about Labuschagne and Smith not playing a lot of first-class cricket. It's a challenge for the bowlers. So, but yeah, Sri Lanka, they'll be really disappointed having got, as you said, 396 and then lose by an innings. You think you get a score like that, you're able to apply some pressure, but they looked okay with a new ball, but once the new ball disappeared, they looked a little bit pop gun. And Sri Lanka, South Africa are exceptional in their own conditions. Dean Elgar, Markram, I mean, they stunted that new ball and then went on the counter attack again. And Duplessis, he loves Centurion. 199, he was superb. And then Sri Lanka, we talked about how many players they lost. I mean, I think they were down to 6, maybe 7 at the end of the Test match, which is pretty tough to compete.
They've sort of been off the radar a wee bit, South Africa, because they've been really hurt by COVID over there. The whole country's still in a bit of a mess, to be fair. No attendance in this Test match. Sipamia and Ngidi were key factors in the second innings. They seem to be finding some fast bowling stocks.
Yeah, you add that to Nokia, and they don't have Rabada available, so that's a pretty good, four-pronged attack when you get them all on the park. I mean, they are a good side, especially in their conditions. Centurion, it's quick. As you know, those cracks tend to appear, and it becomes a bit up and down as the Test match evolves. So you got anyone with pace who hits the wicket hard, and not only subcontinent batsmen, but any batsmen around the world tend to struggle. So you're right, it's a place that breeds fast bowlers. Looking through history, they've always been able to get a number of them on the park. Nokia for me is a real find. He bowls genuine gas. Ngidi, on bouncy wickets, he just always comes at you. And he's got that ability to straighten it down the line as well. So just creates some real challenges. But, they look pretty well balanced to me, South Africa now.
Okay, let's get across to New Zealand cricket then. And we'll look at New Zealand against Pakistan at the Mount. It was quite a classic Test match. To be honest, I didn't watch it. I listened to it on the radio, and I was quite intrigued by the whole thing.
Yeah, it was a surface that certainly suited Pakistan in terms of didn't have a huge amount of pace in it, so it allowed the Pakistan batsmen to get into the game, and it certainly was absorbing. It certainly, the seamers especially, it was more about being patient and creating pressure over long periods of time rather than just running in and trying to blast sides out. Pakistan got behind the game because their top 6 in the first innings struggled. And until Rizwan and Fahim got together, they were potentially going to follow on, and the Test match was going to follow a similar trait to the West Indies 2 tests. So they showed a huge amount of fight, Pakistan, And I thought New Zealand stuck at it incredibly well, and that's certainly one of the traits that they've showed over many years. And Kane Williamson's certainly got that team absolutely humming at the moment.
Individuals to come out of it. You've mentioned Neil Wagner, who's now out of the Test series, the next Test, because of those injuries you talk about. It's all very well playing with one, but going into a Test match with an injury of that nature is probably a bit of a no-no. So he's out, and Matt Henry comes back in, which is pretty much guaranteed. He's been in the fold the whole time. He's had injury issues and gone away and sorted those out. So I'm not sure there was too much about that. What about Tim Southee? I know Tim Southee takes pride on his performance and his achievements, and now all of a sudden he's joined the 300 club, which ranks him right up there with the best in the world going around at the moment. And behind Richard Hadlee, of course, is our next best quick bowler. Tim Southee, for you, I mean, you put a lot of faith in him, particularly in terms of your leadership group as well. You just kind of, you saw something, I think, that a lot of New Zealanders didn't quite see in Tim Southee. I thought there was quite a jocular guy. You look at his mannerisms on the field, he's always laughing and chatting away to the opposition and this sort of thing. And you kind of wondered whether he would have those capabilities. But he is now simply undoubted as being one of New Zealand's great bowlers.
Yeah, he is, Smithy, and he's he's been able to do it over such a long period of time in different conditions throughout the world where, it's all very well doing it in your backyard when it swings and bounces, but, Tim Southee's your go-to guy on the subcontinent because he can get it to reverse swing, he can bowl maidens, he can change his plan because he's a very smart cricketer. And you're right, he's a character, but he's a very, very clever cricketer, and he understands the game, he understands how different players have their strengths and how he can get the best out of them. And he does it his way. And I think that the fact that Kane Williamson and Tim Southee complement each other, once again, it's a really nice leadership group. You add Tom Latham to that as well. You've got different characters who bring different skills to the table. And to have a bowler within that leadership group, I think, is so important. They understand the demands of what bowlers have to go through. When you're talking about declarations, which it's a great problem to have. Declarations, but also follow-ons. It's a great problem to have when your team's having that conundrum over, when or if to do it. To have a bowler who can understand how fresh guys are, whether they're able to bowl that second, third, fourth spell the following day, having only had their feet up for a couple of hours. He brings that knowledge to the table, which is so important when you're trying to win Test matches. It's all very well looking to enforce follow-ons, but if you haven't got energy in the tank, you're going to fall over and you're going to end up having a nasty chase in the fourth innings. So, but he's an amazing bowler, Smithy. I mean, you stood behind Sir Richard Hadlee for so long, and they're different types of bowlers. But what are some of the traits that you think are similar between the two?
A very sensible line, and by and large, from ball one, they commit the batsman to make decisions. And I think that's one of the strengths of Tim Southee. And that's why you often see him and Trent Bock, for that matter, getting early wickets, because they demand things from batsmen early on in the piece. They give them very little freebies. They might bowl a loose over every now and then. They might bowl a loose ball every now and then. But by and large, 4 to 5 out of 6 deliveries are a threat. And that, I think, is why Tim Southee has been so successful over the years. He can move the ball, of course, with his stock and trade to move it away from the right-hander. The other thing that has really amazed me about Tim Southee is his ability, I think, to field in the slip cordon area. I mean, he's got a terrific pair of hands. He really is. He's the genuine article, as is the captain, Kane Williamson, Mike, number 1 in the world. Now, there was a voting system not long ago about players of the decade. Kane Williamson, of course, made the men's test team of the decade, and that's some fairly heavy artillery in the top 6 there. And now, of course, on the back of a double 100 and 100, he sees himself as number 1 in the world, which is something we should all be proud of.
Yeah, without doubt, and I don't think anyone around the world would complain about that. I mean, the thing that Kane Williamson does that any team wants is he scores hard runs. And both of those scores he's come in at a difficult time. New Zealand getting chucked in all 3 Test matches so far on surfaces that are challenging. and to get, a double hundred and 100 against, Pakistan, that 100, it's a very good seam attack, that Pakistan seam attack. And New Zealand, as I said, were in trouble. The ball was moving enough, both in the air and off the surface. He just showed his class, and he showed his ability to adapt, like Tim Southee, to all conditions around the world, which, means you are truly world class. And we should be proud of Kane. We should be proud of what he's done with the bat and what he's done with this team. This team is on the cusp of being #1 Test team in the world, which is phenomenal. We've never done that as a Test nation.
Mike, just finally, it seems like we're doing an obituary a week at the moment about players around the world or administrators that we're losing, and I found it quite incredible that New Zealand would have 2 cricketers by the name of John Reid, and both of them pass away within 2 months of each other. John Bogo Reid, of course, in October, and just the other day on the 28th of December, we lost John Fulton Reid, who did a lot more for New Zealand cricket, I think, than a lot of people quite realise, particularly behind the scenes. I can talk a wee bit about him. Passed away at the age of 64. He was a teammate of mine. We toured Australia, we toured Pakistan together in particular, and he made impacts on both of those tours. And just 19 Test matches, he scored 600s. I saw all of them. He scored a wonderful 100 at the Gabba in the Test match where Richard Hadley got his 15 wickets. Without the partnership between Martin Crowe, the late Martin Crowe, and the late John Reid, then we would have not been able to establish the lead that we did in that Test match for Hadley to go on and get his 6 wickets in the second innings. That was a huge partnership. It was grit, determination, and John Reid was very much part of that. But where I really liked watching him play was in the subcontinent, in particular his ability to play spin. John Reid, on a tour of Pakistan, in the first couple of 3 innings that he played, he got out LBW, and one of the 2 of the decisions weren't that flash, but he blamed himself for bringing the umpires into play. So he said, I've got to make an adjustment here. I've got to look at my technique and not rely on luck, etc. I'm going to actually use bat on ball and take my pads out of the game as much as humanly possible. And he did that, and he scored Test hundreds, and he played, and he batted for long, long periods of time, and he denied what was a very good spin attack from Pakistan way back in those days. So, and that was just an example of how he thought through situations. He's a hell of a nice guy, a terrific tourist, never said a bad word against anyone. He's had a perennial smile on his face, even when things weren't going well. He seemed to still find the pleasant side of things. Average 46, Mike, and that's by New Zealand standards going back a bit. That's a hell of a good average. But you knew him. I mean, he's 1,000, still the fewest innings to 1,000 runs by a New Zealand batsman. The fewest innings, he's still got that record, which says quite a lot about him. You know him from an administrative point of view, working with him along those lines. He carried on after his playing days to do quite a bit for New Zealand cricket.
Yeah, I mean, he was Mr. Fix-It, I guess, for New Zealand cricket during some tough times. He coached New Zealand when they were struggling. He was running the academy at the time. He was the operations manager at New Zealand cricket. He was the go-to guy around New Zealand players learning to play spin. And I remember going to many camps at the academy and working with a huge variety of players and talking through the ability to try and create length. As New Zealanders, we often prodded forward or looked to play off the front foot. He had a completely different philosophy. He would look to prop forward so that he could score off the back foot. And he created a lot more options for New Zealand players, even in the era now. That got passed on to coaches who are helping some of our players, develop and potentially play spin now. But he was all of those things you talked about. He was a sounding board, a really stable influence during New Zealand cricket, as I said, during a state of flux during the late 90s. He came in, he was always calm, he was always really clear around the direction he wanted New Zealand cricket to go. Personally, he was a guy that I trusted a lot and trusted his opinion moving into the coaching phase of my career. So he had a huge influence over that very, very much during its infancy. And he was just a great guy. and 64 is way too young, Smithy. It was, really sad news.
Yeah, it came as a real shock to me. Yes, I've got to say. So, our thoughts with Karen, his wife, his daughters, Amanda and Caroline. So we really do, from our fraternity anyway, here pass our deepest sympathies and condolences on to the Reid family. So, very, very sad, Mike. Not the way I wanted to end the show, but the reality is it's happening a lot, and we just got to move forward, and hopefully 2021 will be a much better year for world cricket.